owner. So Brianna and Caitlin, you can take it away, and here we go.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Again, I'm Caitlin, and I'm happy to be here with Brianna today. And again, kind of our topic for our discussion for today is search engine optimization techniques for the small business owner. And thanks again to the Northland Small Business Development Center for having us be here today. So in this webinar, we really want to highlight several important tactics that you can implement for your business and improve your overall digital presence, more specifically in regards to search engines and just general searchability and online visibility. So to kick your business's search engine presence off, as a business owner, one of the most important tools that you can utilize is Google Business Profile. In the past, this feature used to be called Google My Business, but in late 2021, the name transitioned to Google Business Profile. This is a free profile that you can create on behalf of your business that not only helps put your business's information at the forefront on search engines, but it can also ultimately help increase leads. So just as an example, for anyone listening who may not be familiar with Google Business Profile, it's that detailed profile of a business that pops up when you're searching specific terms on Google. So in this particular example we have on screen here, we typed in pediatric dentist Duluth MN, and the top 3 results popped up, those being Great Lakes Children's Dental, Ever Smiles, and Dr. Rami. Out of these 3 results, when we click on Ever Smiles, for example, an additional profile pops up on Google with even more helpful information regarding their business. So as I mentioned, it's free to set up, and it really should take no longer than a handful of minutes to initially get things going. But it is worth noting, however, that even if it only takes a handful of minutes to set up, time continuously needs to be set aside to update your information and any other important details, because as we'll get into in some later slides, it can be extremely frustrating to provide outdated or inaccurate information about a business on Google, and that can lead to a whole plethora of issues. So there's a lot of benefits that come along with active Google profile, like being able to provide website searchers basic but very important information about your business, like your hours, your address, your website, etc., things of that nature. But not only that, but you also have the ability to interact with your customers via posts, photos, and responding to reviews. So one way to get a step ahead of your competition is by having your business details rank in the Google Map Pack. So in layman's terms, the Google Map Pack is essentially a set of 3 highlighted Google Maps-based results. So like the previous slide we displayed, in this slide as well, in this case, the Great Lakes Dental or Great Lakes Children's Dental, Ever Smiles, and Dr. Rami were the top 3 Google Map Pack that popped up when you type in pediatric dentist Duluth MN. So this pack is displayed above traditional text-only search results, and it makes it one of the most valuable pieces of online real estate across any platform. So appearing in those top 3 results allows your business to gain more exposure, more clicks, more phone calls, etc. So a few ways you can increase your chances of showing up in these top 3 results is by absolutely ensuring that all your information on your Google profile is up to date, that you have a number of positive reviews, and also that your business profile is connected to your website that also hosts relevant, updated information regarding your business. So in terms of setting up a Google business profile, we obviously will not go through all the nitpicky details, but all you need to do is visit business.google.com. And if you don't have one already, you need to create a Google-based Gmail account to get things started. You'll be asked to provide information to prove that you are the rightful owner of the business. So depending on the circumstances of your account or other security requirements of your industry, you will most likely be given a verification code via regular mail, email, or text. So, and also just as a note, if you're a service area business, as opposed to having a brick and mortar location where your customers visit, you do have the ability to hide any sort of business address. So if, for example, you're a plumber and you run your business from your residential address, that's something that you can hide from people checking out your profile. So lastly, to wrap things up with the Google Business Profile, there are a couple final things you want to keep in mind. first off, listing your business in a relevant primary category is super important. Google allows you to list a primary category and then several subcategories, but just ensure that you are not including any irrelevant categories related to your brand or business. Secondly, as we've said many times, and it's only been a few minutes into this presentation, ensure that you don't neglect your profile. Make sure you're staying active and you continuously update your profile with timely information, photos and videos, and updated hours, again, things of that nature. And lastly, you'll want to avoid duplicate listings. Don't make a new profile if your business moves locations. All you need to do is update your business information. In this case, if you just moved locations, you'd likely need to change your address, maybe your phone number, things like that. So having a duplicate listing violates Google's terms of service, and there may be repercussions on Google's end if you have more than one listing. So with that, that kind of wraps up the process of getting your business information onto Google in profile form. But now we're going to shift gears slightly and make a quick detour and talk briefly about taking the first step to ensure that your website, not just your Google profile, but your website even shows up on Google in the first place. So in order for Google to even know that your website wants to appear in search results, you have to submit a sitemap, which is essentially a map of all the pages and blog posts on your website into a platform called Google Search Console. If you don't submit your sitemap, Google may eventually discover your website and start ranking it, but who's telling how long that might take? So if you submit it manually, as we're suggesting, your website will be discovered much quicker, and Google Search Console also will provide you tips for improving your website as well. So after you've submitted your website, you can always check to see if your website is ranking by simply Googling site, semicolon, and then your URL. And if your website pops up in the results, that means that your website is being indexed or crawled by Google. So that's a nice tool that you can use to ensure that you're actually showing up on Google.
Say, Caitlin, I did not
Yep.
cover this when we started. Do we want to answer questions as we go through, or do we want to wait to the end? I do have a question in the chat.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, honestly.
Okay, well, why don't we take this one now, since I think this one is relevant to the topic
Okay.
we're talking about. It says, Darren is asking, what do you do if you have two locations and Google verified one location and you request a postcard for the second location, never arrives to verify the business? I've been waiting for 6 months for the second postcard. Thanks.
Okay, so it sounds like a postcard to verify the Google profile did not show up. I'm sure you probably tried to do this already. You might be able to request verification again, but Google also does have a pretty robust customer service section where you'll be able to go in and chat with an actual representative, and they might be able to give you a little bit better insight as to why the actual postcard didn't show up on your doorstep. Things get lost in the mail, things of that nature. But yeah, Google has kind of transitioned to having your Google profiles be verified via postcard, which isn't, necessarily my favorite way of getting verification. I'd rather get a text or something like that because it's a lot quicker. But I would definitely recommend reaching out to Google's customer service section and just kind of chatting with them. I think they might be able to have a little better insight into maybe what went wrong there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've discussed some of the first steps you can take on Google's side of things to improve your rankings, we're now going to transition to talking about some of the tactics you can utilize on your website to bolster your SEO. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Brianna.
Yeah, and one of the things that, probably the biggest thing that Google looks for is they are providing search engine ranking results for the users. They are not geared towards the businesses. They are not geared towards the marketers. They want to focus on the users. And so probably the quickest way to get your business noticed and ranked on the search results is if you have a brand. But if you're a new business, you might ask, how do I develop a brand? Maybe you're an existing business and you still don't know how to develop a brand. I usually recommend to our clients that they really utilize the customer reviews. And Caitlin has a slide further down that's going to show a little bit more about the actual logistics of using customer reviews. But the biggest thing is to, if you have a product that maybe people could sample, you would give out samples to people, and then you would ask them to please review your product on your Google review sections. So we'll get it more into that later, but develop a brand would be my first suggestion. So the next slide is all about user experience. And again, I probably am going to cross into talking about a lot of the other things that are going to come up on the slides, because user experience, usually you'll see it called UX, is really what it's all about. And so if your potential customer, your current customer, if they have a great user experience, they are going to spend more time on your website, which Google thinks is amazing. If you have a high bounce rate, people, maybe are visiting your page, the page isn't loading fast enough, or they aren't finding the information quick enough, or it's just a mess, they're going to leave, and Google notices that. And that's probably one of the other biggest rankings or biggest determinations of rankings that Google has. And so you want to provide people with a good user experience, and how you can do that is, providing that SSL, making sure that people know that when they visit your website, that it's a safe website, it's a safe place. You have a privacy policy. Google requires that. Again, we'll get more into those details on future slides. But really, the biggest thing with user experience is your content. And a lot of times I like to use the example of, being in a relationship, like a long-term relationship, whether it's a friendship or whatever it might be. You don't talk about the same thing all the time, right? So you aren't repeating yourself. You aren't talking about, hey, my kid just took his first steps today, and 2 weeks later, you're still talking about that. So you always want to have fresh information for people. You don't want to be boring. You want to provide interesting content, but also fresh content. And so we used to tell people, write a blog, and blogs are still a really good source of new content and a way to get that information out there. But really, video and podcasts they're huge. And so they're really time consuming, and you have to put forth an effort to really make a good video or a good podcast, but Google gives those a lot of ranking consideration as well. So and then that leads us into usability. So can people use their mobile device to navigate your website? Because that's important too. And again, I feel like we've been talking about this for years and years and years, because we have, but it's very, very important. I can't remember exactly what the statistics are, but worldwide, I think that 60% of users are searching for information on their mobile device. And 40% are searching on their desktop, and then the rest of them are on like tablets and things like that. So really, mobile devices, when you're on the go, you probably aren't sitting at your desk during the day and going, where should I eat tonight? I'm going to Google this on my desktop. Instead, you might be on the go and you look at it on your mobile device. It has to be really easy to use. So optimize your website for mobile is super important. And then there's on this slide too, it talks about a place that you can go to test your mobile device. And if you just Google mobile friendly test, it will bring you to a link that you can test your website's mobile friendliness. Okay, so qualifying external links, this also applies to internal links. And so for people in search engines to be able to find your page, you want to make sure that you have other links going to it and leaving it, going to other pages on your site that might provide people with more useful information. Instead of having to have them search your site, you can link from one page to the next. So you want to make sure that you don't go overboard though and link every page on every post, because that's going to get overboard, and Google is going to, they're going to say, okay, that's enough. That's too much. You're trying too hard. It's kind of the equivalent to, I'm sure you've probably heard of keyword stuffing, where you don't want to do that either. So you want to make sure too that if you have any backlinks or external links, that they're going to reputable sources. Stay away from any sort of fake news. You can easily research that. If you link to something that's bogus, Google is going to recognize that, and they're not going to like that very much. So that's going to hurt. That'll hurt your rankings quite a bit. So yeah. I think next we're going to talk about the website content and keywords. And here again is where I was talking about earlier, that really, you want to write for your user, write for human beings, not for Google's algorithms and what you think maybe people might be doing. There's tools out there to do research on the keywords so that you can implement those keywords into your content so that you know what people are looking for. But you want to make sure that everything is authentic and real and really interesting information. And again, that's where the videos come in. I don't remember what the statistics are, but people really like to watch videos. You have people who read the content, but the videos make you personable. People can relate to you when they see you talking about things. Again, with content and keywords, trying to think of a good example here. Maybe if you're a bait shop and you specialize in freshwater fishing, you are going to load your page full of freshwater fish, the trout, the walleye, those types of things, and you might rank better than a site that also does freshwater fishing, but also does, saltwater fishing. So if they've got multiple things in their content, if it's more robust, your site might rank higher because the emphasis is on what the person is actually looking for. And so you want to make sure that if you do offer multiple products, multiple services, that they each have their own page and they each have their own content so that Google can easily find that information. So, yeah. Multimedia images and videos. I've talked about this a little bit with the videos, but this particular slide is more about the mechanics of it and making sure that when you provide the search engines with information about the images, that's called alt text. And so you want to make sure that you have descriptions about what each photo is about. And, like Caitlin and I were just talking the other day, sometimes you have photos or images on your page that are really just nothing. And so you don't necessarily want to give every single thing a description. And so that's where you would write null on certain, images or photos that don't really offer a whole lot of value, that aren't going to offer value to those search engines. And then of course the image size, you want to make sure that the images aren't too loud or too large, because they're going to slow down your page speed. And that's really going to hurt you, because if you go to a page, and again, there's more about page speed on future slides, if it takes too long to load, people are just going to leave, and the image size really has a lot to do with that as well.
Absolutely. Do we have any questions from that section? Just wanted to.
Yeah, there was one question on, it says, I had a customer who tried to do a rating but was unable to. Any suggestions?
When you say unable to, do you happen to know what the problem? Did something come back and just say that? I guess I don't know what were they told? How come they couldn't do it?
Gina, if you're still with us, maybe you can type that in the chat. I guess she just said it wouldn't work.
I don't know, Caitlin, what would be some of the reasons do you think that?
I think it would be a little bit helpful to have hopefully a little bit more background information on that before we speak on that. Not sure if an error message popped up or if it just said you're not allowed or things of that nature. So if Gina comes back and has any other information, we can certainly answer that. But if she hasn't said anything, I guess we'll just kind of keep moving forward and we can
Well, Caitlin, I have a question for you about reviews, and this is something I don't know the answer to. So if I want to review a business and I had a great experience with them, so I left my review, and then a couple weeks later I went back and had business dealings with them again, and I wanted to leave them another positive review, how many times can one person leave a review for one business? Is there a limit?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of a limit. It might be one per business. I guess in my dealings, I've never personally gone back to you. I know you can edit a review. So it might just be that one review per person. Can't speak on that though.
Yeah, I was just trying to brainstorm some reasons that somebody might not be able to do a review if maybe they've done a review already or.
Sure.
But
Another question. Kim is looking for the link to verify, for having Google verify my site.
Okay. For Google to verify your site, I'm not sure she's talking through Google Search Console or through Google Business Profile. She's wanting Google to verify her site. Because to get your site onto Google, you need to go through Google Search Console, which is a separate platform which you can set up using your Gmail-based account, and then add your URL, and then your website will be able to show up in results. But if you're talking through Google Business Profile, once you have the profile set up, there will be a section on the homepage dashboard where you can select to verify your location or your profile in general.
And was that one business.google.com?
Yes. Yeah. business.google.com.
We'll move on from there, and we'll have a little more time at the end of the presentation for more questions as well.
Wonderful. So we also kind of wanted to highlight other important SEO factors that aren't necessarily at the top of Google's priority list, but are also important nonetheless. So we'll kick things off with accessibility. In short, website accessibility is the act of making sure that your websites are accessible and usable for everyone. So we could talk for hours about making sure that your website is accessible to anyone, whether it's someone with vision impairments or hearing impairments, what have you. But we unfortunately don't have hours to do that this morning. But what we can do is suggest adding an ADA plugin or software to your website so that visitors can increase font size, change contrasting colors, and other things of that nature. So we also suggest adding an accessibility statement to your website, which is basically a declaration of how accessible your website is. So on our resources page at the end of our presentation here, we have listed the website that you can utilize to create this statement, and it just kind of goes through your whole accessibility, the factors that you have set in place on your website to ensure that it's accessible for anyone and everyone. So accessible websites directly tie in with SEO because an accessible website helps all users easily navigate and improves their overall user experience. And as Brianna just talked about a second ago, user experience is absolutely pertinent in the world of SEO. So having an accessible website is super important. Moving on from accessibility, you'll also want to make sure that your contact information on your website is updated along with the contact information on your social media profiles, and all that information lines up with what you have inputted into your Google business profile. So make sure that your content information accurately lists your business name, your address, your phone number, your email, and any other important details related to your business. I realize that this is a pretty standard suggestion that most people have a pretty strong grasp of, but it's honestly appalling at times how many businesses do not update their information, more specifically their hours, especially holiday hours. And you can leave a bunch of confused people with conflicting business details in your wake. So you don't want to upset your customers. So making sure that you are actively updating your contact information is super important. You'll also want to make sure that your contact information is listed as text on your website, not as an image that you just plugged into a page on your website. Listing your information as text allows search engines the ability to easily crawl and read and understand your contact information. So Google also takes several key measures to ensure accuracy of your information. So Google will compare the information listed on your website to the information listed on your Google profile. So if your website and your profile aren't displaying the same exact contact information, you'll want to edit your website or your profile to make sure that they're consistent. And Google doesn't want to show incorrect information in its search results, and having conflicting details is certainly a red flag in Google's book. So
I had another question about speed. Is there any kind of WordPress plugins or anything to help your website speed that you can mention?
the one of the plugins that we had on the multimedia image page, if we want to go back here, this WP Smush is a really great plugin to improve your page speed beyond just, well, a big reason why your page is slowed down is because your images are too big or they're not formatted correctly. So I would absolutely recommend WP Smush as kind of a good starting point to kind of, filter out some of the really large images and format them correctly.
The other factor that plays into page speed is your hosting provider as well. So you'll want to make sure that you do a little bit of research on who's hosting your website, because they have a lot to do with your page speed as well. And Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called Google Page Speed, right? I mean, can't people go and test their page speed, or they can go through Google Search Console to find the page speed test as well, and they can test. And then I believe that the Google Page Speed test will also give you some tips on how to improve your page speed. So it'll actually lay out links for you to visit, and you can go through and correct them. Again, a little time consuming, but so well worth it.
Absolutely. Yep. So if you just Google Page Speed Index, I don't have the exact URL off the top of my head, but if you Google that, select the first result, that'll bring you to a whole page where you can implement your URL. And yeah, it'll give you a lot of helpful kind of developer heavy information. But Google Search Console also is a great platform to utilize. It gives you your core website vitals, which is, I personally think that Google Search Console uses a little bit more user-friendly language. The page speed index can be kind of a little heavy at times, but it's still important to check out. I'd suggest everyone take a moment to check that out at some point, and it's really helpful. All right, so you'll also want to utilize meta tags or descriptions to best showcase your website content. So meta tags are important because they impact how your site appears in search results, and ultimately in turn affects how many people will be inclined to click through to your website. So meta tags are that snippet of text that acts as a descriptor for your website page. So as just mentioned, the keywords that you implement into your meta tag and the general wording you use all impacts your traffic and engagement rates, which then in turn impacts your SEO and rankings. So additionally, well-written meta tags also help search engines have a better understanding of the content on each page of your website. So as a best practice when it comes to writing meta tags, you should remember to include the page's theme or topic in the meta description, and also implement any important keywords without any needless stuffing. So you've got like 160 characters to create a robust meta description. Make sure you implement that topic, a couple keywords, maybe your location if you so desire, if you've got enough room. But that's kind of what you want to focus. It's important to have it's important to have meta descriptions that accurately display the relevant content on your pages. So, and we really like to use Yoast SEO and Rank Math are two great plugins to use when it comes to writing meta descriptions. Now we're going to kind of filter right back to online customer reviews, which we kind of touched on a couple times previously. Another great way to improve your online credibility and presence is by having online reviews. Google trusts the power of word of mouth marketing, and it factors in the quantity and quality of reviews to evaluate a search position. So just as customers use online reviews to validate their purchase decisions, search engines such as Google also kind of take a similar stance when it comes to that. So when it comes to online reviews, all you can do is ask. You can ask via email, in person, over the phone. But what's important is that you make it as easy as possible for every customer to leave a review. So if you do some work for somebody with your business, you can always send a follow-up email thanking them for their time, thanking them for their communication, and also simply asking them to leave a review. Google Business Profile provides an easy link to share with anyone. And you can even add this link to your website. You can access this by selecting Get More Reviews on your Google Business Profile settings page. So it gives you that nice little snippet. You can copy that over to email, add it as a button on your website, what have you. But it's also not enough to just acquire reviews. You should also respond to the reviews as well. So that means also responding to negative reviews. So you always want to keep it professional. So a professional response would be reviewer's name. Thank you for posting a review, and we're sorry to hear that your experience was not of the quality you expected. We would like the opportunity to investigate your feedback further. Please call us at your business phone number so we can work to resolve this issue as quickly as possible. So that's a professional, kind of clean-cut way to respond to critics. And you're also providing a means to potentially solve any distaste by offering to discuss the issue further. So, and also when it comes to positive reviews, as I said, you can add them to your website as well. Customer reviews help add content to your site, and they can help you look more valuable and more believable to those who are exploring your website and business for the first time. So there's nothing wrong with having a testimonials tab on your website or a testimonials reviews carousel that kind of filters through your homepage. Those are great ways to add more content to your website and also making you seem more credible. So. And lastly, when it comes to some additional SEO practices you can implement, it's very important that your website has an active security certificate, which is also known as an SSL on the website. You'll know you have a secure website, as Brianna mentioned, if your website displays an HTTPS before your URL. So security certifications not only help user data stay secure, it also conveys trust to users, thus improving user experience. Again, we're tying back to user experience. Another way to show that your website is secure and credible is by displaying a privacy policy. You are required to provide a privacy policy to your audience if you use Google or Google Analytics. So it's required under Google's terms of service, and without it, on a bad day, you could be at risk for privacy fines from Google or from other entities. So very important that you have a privacy policy displayed on your website. But the good news is there's a bunch of websites that provide privacy policy generators. It's a one-time startup fee, and it will take you through the steps of getting a privacy policy set up, and then you can copy and paste it into your website. So again, having these certifications and policies bolsters your online credibility, which in turn makes you look better in search engines' eyes. It's kind of a full circle experience. So now that we've gone through some of the basic SEO tips and tricks you can utilize we just want to briefly touch on how you know if your efforts are working. And with that, Brianna will take that from here. Uh-oh, you're muted, Brianna.
I know I mute myself when I'm not talking, and I got all excited and I wanted to talk again. So I started in this business about 26 years ago, and I was a media buyer. And part of what media buying does is with radio and television, things like that, you look at ratings and you look at how many people are watching programming, and Google Analytics is exactly that, but for your website. And so this is something that for people who are craving the information, how many people are visiting my site, how long are they sticking around for, this is like, you can spend hours on Google Analytics and looking at things. So what I find really interesting is in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see we have a screenshot of Duluth, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hermantown, Cloquet, Hibbing. You can see how many people are looking at your website in these different geographical areas. And so when you know where your customer needs to be, maybe you're a brick and mortar store, you don't offer shipping, you want just people in Duluth, Hermantown, Proctor, and the surrounding areas, and you don't want somebody who lives in Missouri necessarily. So you can take a look at your website and see what your website is doing to draw the people in from the different geographical areas that they're visiting from. You also get to see how long they're sticking around. This is called a bounce rate, and it's a very important part of the ranking process for Google, is how long people are sticking around your site. Are they landing on the site and staying on there for a few minutes and reading in the information? Or again, like I had kind of mentioned before, is your page loading slowly and they say, forget it, I'm going to find my source of information elsewhere? Or maybe they went looking for, you know, whatever they searched for, their keywords, and your website didn't have that. And so now you need to look at your website and see why you're ranking for certain words. You know, Caitlin and I had a client here not too long ago that we did a website audit for, and we found out that some of the words that she was using in her website were very closely related to some women's fashion accessories. And so we were able to help her kind of tweak some of her information, some of her content on her website, so that people looking for these handbags weren't landing on her website instead and then leaving right away once they discovered that that's not what she was offering. That can really hurt your website. So that's a little bit about Google Analytics. Caitlin, did I miss anything?
Nope, I think you're good there.
Do either of you know what a great bounce rate? What should I be looking for a percentage of bounce rate? I mean, if I'm at 70%, I'm assuming that's not good, but what's a good bounce rate?
The lower, the better.
Lower the better. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a blanket statement. I know. I'm sorry. Maybe Caitlin has some more insight on that. I always lower it. So
lower the better. It also depends sometimes on your industry. Some industries tend to have higher bounce rates than others. So there's not a blanket statement for you need to be below 50% or that's considered bad. You can look into again, you can use Google. You can type in your industry typical bounce rate for that particular industry, and they'll kind of give you a benchmark of maybe where you should fall, where a safe zone is, things of that nature. So,
thank you.
Yep. Then we also kind of have a resources page here that you can use to improve your SEO. These are kind of all the resources that we went over in the presentation. We've got the accessibility fundamentals kind of listed there, the plugins, other keyword websites that you can use to make sure that your resources are up to date and whatnot, and your content is up to date using these resources. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I tell people this all the time that marketing your business and maintaining your website, it really can be a full-time job, and not everybody has the kind of time to devote to search engine optimization and writing fresh content all the time and developing videos. But please, especially when you're running your business and you're taking care of your own customers, but try to set aside some quiet time once a week to just work on just a little bit. It's better than doing nothing. I understand that people don't have hours and hours to spend, but the content, having fresh content, is really a major factor. I know I kind of talked about it before, that it's like being in a relationship. You talk about new things to people who are continuously visiting your website. So you don't want to show them the same old thing every single time they visit, or they're going to stop visiting. And so to change it up quite a bit and keep the content fresh is really important. And the more people see you, I know we didn't talk a lot about social media, but again, that does help with your search engine rankings, because it might not lead to your website directly, but people do search on Instagram. I mean, YouTube is the second highest rated search engine, second only to Google. And then of course it's owned by Google. So, any utilization that you can do of videos will also help your website. So if you leave here remembering one thing, it's have fresh, relevant content, and your website will at least improve.
And speaking of YouTube, we will have this presentation on our YouTube channel. I don't know exactly when, but shortly.
Wonderful segue. Yeah, well, thank you so much again for everyone for listening. We've kind of got a slide here of just how to reach us if you have any additional questions. Thank you again to the Northland SBDC for having us here today. And yeah, this was wonderful. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for your expertise in helping the Northland SBDC and the other people that we've talked to today. I hope everyone enjoys the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.